Song for Heather.
Good evening. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Michael Hicks, and I'm Heather's brother. Before we get into what I imagine will be an amazing celebration of Heather's life, I'd like to start by extending our family's deepest and most sincere gratitude and appreciation to the organizations and the people who've made this celebration amazing. First, to Warner Brothers for hosting this event. It's only fitting we celebrate Heather's life here, in this place, in this studio, in this town, in what has become the epicenter of her professional life here in California. To Max Muchnick and David Cohan for organizing such a wonderful tribute to Heather. Thank you also for giving her that chance almost 13 years ago. I bet you didn't know then the impact she would have on your lives. Thank you to everyone else who played a role, all the people who coordinated all the details and took care of my family and everyone here. Thank you so much. And finally, to everyone here and those who couldn't make it, but have reached out with a kind word, a note, or a funny story about Heather. Thank you. The outpouring of love and support has been truly awe-inspiring. Knowing how much she meant to each of you and that she is still in your thoughts gives us peace and will help us get through the sad times ahead. That said, we're not here to be sad. Heather was not a sad person. We are here to celebrate the life of an amazing woman. And you all know Heather. She loved a party, and she loved a celebration. So in the spirit of celebration, I want to start by what Heather meant to her family. First, she was a daughter, the youngest of three, who always seemed to be at the center of every commotion and every controversy in our family. She pushed Mom over the edge and freaked out Dad time and time again. She took it to an art form. She was also a Hicks girl, and that was the greatest moniker our father could bestow upon a female member of our family. I could spend hours and give you countless examples of what that means to be a Hicks girl, but suffice it to say, it was a badge of honor she wore proudly. Second, she was a sister, the baby of the family who seemed to get away with everything. Not that anyone's keeping score, no hard feelings here, but also, she reluctantly played the role of the little brother I always wanted, and she had the scars to prove it. She also joined me in ganging up on our sister Amy, the middle sister, the good one, and who has the emotional scars to prove that as well. Third, she was an aunt who always found a way to be involved and be relevant in the lives of her nieces and nephews. She made no bones about proclaiming she was the kids' favorite and the coolest. Fourth, she was a wife. She chose Jason to be her partner. I know she loved him with all her heart. She chose you. You are a very lucky man to have earned the right to call her yours. And last, but certainly not least, she was a mother. The greatest joys in her life are her sons, Matthew and James. She was a wonderful mother and worked tirelessly at it. You can already see the tremendous impact she's had on both those little boys. She loved them ferociously. All of this said, this is just the tip of the iceberg, because not everyone knew Heather as a daughter, as a sister, as an aunt, a wife, or a mother. So I want to conclude my remarks with what she meant to some of her closest friends, in their words, not mine. Heather was a true friend. She was loyal, honest, sincere, giving, faithful, and devoted to her friends. She was always there for you and know what to say and when to say it, especially when you needed that no BS, slap you upside your head truth of the matter that you didn't want to hear but desperately needed to hear. A friend who offered you the loving support of someone who truly cared about you. There was no pretense about Heather. It is what it is. When you were with Heather, you felt like you were the most important person to her. Family. Her family and those she called family were the center of her life and are what mattered most to her. She was on the East Coast when she passed. She was coming home to family for the holidays. Heather was a connector. She had a way of reaching out to people, often complete strangers, and making a true connection with them. Everyone in this room is a testament to that. She was able to connect with people because she was kind, caring, sincere, and genuine. She had an amazing sense of humor. Heather found a way to make people laugh. She found humor in most situations, even when it wasn't appropriate. She had an infectious laugh, and you wanted to laugh with her. Love. Heather loved. She loved unconditionally. Again, no pretense. She loved you for who you are, not what you are. She was a caregiver to the ones she loved. She took care of everyone. So much so sometimes it was to her own detriment. She always put others first. But that was her way. She always took care of her peeps, and she kept good company. She loved with all of her heart. as her dear friend Nancy stated, isn't it interesting that both Heather and Hart are spelled with the same letters? So is heater, but that's a true and funny story for another time. So I'm going to leave you hanging on that one. You'll have to ask later. I could go on with words like joy, deeply personal, and she was the light that lit up the room, and on and on. But to sum up Heather and what Heather meant to her friends and family could be easily and accurately done with one simple word. Heather was a gift. Heather was a gift to everyone she touched, and she touched people in so many different and special ways. Heather was a gift that touched everyone in this room one way or another. So let us honor Heather's gift to us by keeping her and her family in your thoughts and prayers and remembering fondly what she meant to you. Most importantly, honor her gift to you by staying relevant and an active part in the lives of her family. Thank you for being a part of the celebration of an amazing woman who was our true gift. Thank you.
I consider myself very fortunate to have heard the Heater Hicks story straight from her mouth. No spoilers, it was a good one. So you have something to look forward to when you get around to it at some point tonight. First of all, I just want to say my name is Colin, and last night I was very fortunate to go out to dinner with some of Heather's very best friends, Tim and Becky and Rana, and we got to laugh and cry and tell stories about Heather, and it made me realize that she was the glue that held all of our friends together. She was our rock and our mother, and she consoled us and entertained us over the years. We all know that Heather was an amazing storyteller. She was the first person that I called when I had good news to share. She's also the first person I called when I needed help. Every time that she and I would have a conversation on the phone, she would start it the same way by saying, "Call, tell me a story, Call." I would then regale her with stories from my life and trying to infuse the same kind of humor that Heather was famous for, but no matter how hard I tried, my storytelling abilities didn't hold a candle to hers. And I mean that quite literally. As Tim and Becky and Marcy and Patrick and Rana, many others can attest, Heather often held court at bars and restaurants, and to emphasize that it was her turn to tell the story, she would pull the table candle closer to her face to give her a little spotlight. But as you know, Heather didn't need a spotlight. She radiated so much light all on her own. When I was thinking about what to say today, I wondered what stories could possibly sum up all the years of laughs and tears and special moments that she and I have shared. And then I realized that's precisely what I have. Years. I have years to pull up a candle and tell the story of Heather Hicks Irvin. Something I promised Jason was that his boys would know their mother through our love and our stories. So I hope that you'll all join me in sharing the many stories of our dear Heather. One of the funniest and most loving and supportive women I have ever known. I love you, Heather. Thank you for all your stories, and thank you for being one of the best parts of mine.
First, I want to say what an honor it is to stand here and share a few of my experiences and impressions of Heather with all of you. And I feel the weight of this honor because I know that everyone in here has experiences and impressions to share, deep ones, funny ones, goofy ones, important ones. They're all important ones. We all feel strangely close to Heather, even those who only knew her as the voice on the other end of the phone. I think we all feel a sense of ownership and singularity about our relationship with Heather because nobody I know engendered those feelings more than she did. So I'm honored and I'm humbled, and my hope is that the particularities of my experiences and impressions can kind of merge with and stand in for all of yours, and together we can arrive at some essential truths about this amazing woman whose life we're celebrating tonight. Anyway, I can't remember the first joke I stole from Heather. It might have been the one where she said that after work she was going to this sports bar called Big Wings to watch a game with some friends. And I said, who the hell goes to a bar called Big Wings? And she said, either really tall Chinese people or the man of my dreams. Or maybe the first one was the one where she told me she had to start rethinking her career strategy because, quote, sleeping my way to the middle doesn't seem to be working. I'm not really sure about the first one I stole, but I can tell you the last joke I stole from Heather because Max and I put it in our most recent script. She was describing what her mornings were like when Jason was out of town for work. She said, "Oh, Kohanian, it's pretty crazy. I'll get up, change James' diaper, take the dog for a walk before it does its business in the apartment, get home, start breakfast, make sure Maddie goes to the bathroom, change James again. I mean, do you realize that most days I have 4 poops under my belt by 8 a.m. and not one of them is mine?" I love that joke. I think it distills and encapsulates so many of the things that made Heather such a remarkable and lovable person. I mean, let's start with the fact that she called me Kohanian, okay? Which isn't my name. My name is Kohan, but she liked to call me Kohanian, not from any secret desire for me to be Armenian, but because it's a little silly and irreverent, and it eliminated any stiffness or formality from our rapport. She called me that because she knew it would be fun and put me at ease, and that it would be our little thing. Heather was a master at making people feel comfortable and special and fun, even if they were none of those things. That joke, the 4 poops before 8 a.m. and not one of them is mine joke, is literally about dealing with the crap of the people she cared about, and the animals she cared about, and the people she cared about. Heather was also a master at dealing with other people's crap. She did it willingly. She did it tirelessly. She did it with great efficiency and competence, certain that if someone else were doing it, it simply wouldn't be done as well. She did it without ever losing the ability to laugh at herself for it. And most significantly, that joke is about dealing with other people's crap before she dealt with her own. Heather took care of everybody before she took care of herself. It's one of the things that made her so special. Over the last couple of weeks, I've wished she'd had a little less of that particular quality, but then I guess she wouldn't have been Heather. When Heather first came to work with us 12 years ago, almost 13 years ago, my impression was preppy, smart, funny chick. She could hang at a sports bar with dudes, match them beer for beer, and speak knowledgeably about the Red Sox, Patriots, or 49ers. She could go into the office of her buddies and coworkers, Tim Kaiser and Steve Sandoval, and talk about things that would make frat guys blush. And she'd laugh hysterically, or she'd groan in disgust with them, and basically I thought, she's one of the guys. That's kind of who she is. But then I started to meet and hear about all her girlfriends, how well she helped them navigate relationships, how willingly she opened up to them, how important they were to Heather, and how much they loved and relied on her. And that made me think, no, Heather's really more of a girl's girl. Then on Will and Grace, I saw how well she got along with all of the gay guys. How well she understood and appreciated and handled Max, how deep her friendship was. How deep her friendship was with Patrick Smith and Colin and Tim and Canali and so many others. And that made me think, no, she's not so much one of the guys as she is one of the guys who's into guys. But then I observed her easy, warm relationship with Joni and the lesbians on the show and thought, nah, is it a girl's girl or is she a girl on girl's girl? Anyway, the truth, of course, is that Heather was everyone's kind of girl. She genuinely liked people, all different types of people. She got them. She appreciated them and related to them on their own terms. She used to joke with my dad like she was a Borscht Belt comedian. She was beloved by all the production crew guys of every show she ever worked on. To them, she was part sister, part teamster, part warm, funny, friendly face of the entity known as Above the Line. Network presidents were charmed by Heather. Writers and directors were charmed by Heather. Security guards and craft services ladies were charmed by Heather. Everyone was charmed by Heather, including Heather, by the way. More than once, I've started a conversation with her about stuff that was going on in my life, only to see that conversation turn in short order to stuff that was going on in Heather's life. I'd talk, and she'd introduce an example from her life to illustrate the point I was making. Then I'd talk, and she'd introduce another example from her life to illustrate the illustration of the point that I was making. Then I'd talk some more, and she'd introduce another example from her life, only this time it wasn't to illustrate anything, but just because when you get down to it, isn't my thing a little more fun and relatable than your thing, Kohanian? And here's the deal. It was. Heather was confident about being charming and funny. It's part of what made her so charming and funny. Heather was confident about a lot of things. She was confident at her job. She was confident in her instincts about people. She was confident that she'd be able to solve whatever problem crossed her desk. She was confident in her ability to take care of her children, even when they were very needy or demanding. Which brings me to Max. For years, I had the privilege of a front row seat to witness the relationship between Heather and my writing partner, Max. Heather took care of Max, and Max took care of Heather. Heather protected all of Max's interests and secrets with the fierceness of a lioness. In turn, Max told Heather which blouses looked good on her and which didn't. Max insisted that Heather be married in his home. Heather organized Max's wedding. They celebrated the births of each other's children. They understood each other. They appreciated each other. They got frustrated with each other. But mostly they were loyal to each other, like family. And Max loved Heather like family. And when Heather started getting serious with Jason Irvin, my first thought was, those two are big. They could produce power forwards. I want to help the children that they make develop post moves. My second thought was, good. A fun, sports-loving dude with ambition who's smart and funny and gets the big joke. A woman like Heather needs a man like Jason. And a man like Heather needs a woman like Jason. He is, after all, the one who addresses the emotional matters of the relationship, whereas Heather's attitude was more like, hey, you get hurt, walk it off. No need for a timeout, just take your base. Their approaches were complementary, symbiotic. I've never seen Heather happier than the day she told us she was marrying Jason. until, of course, that union produced the greatest joys of her life, Maddie and James. Right after I heard the news about Heather, I immediately thought of the boys. How would they know her? How would they understand how wonderful their mother was? How dynamic, how kind, how funny, how wise, how brilliantly alive she was. Where would they find tangible, visceral evidence of their amazing legacy, their mother? Stories, accounts, pictures, videos, Facebook pages, mementos. These are all good, but they won't let them feel the totality of her soul. How then? The question was plaguing me until I had this comforting thought. They already know Heather. They already know Heather because they are Heather. They're the flower of her DNA. They are the embodiment of her spirit. It's in them. They don't have to look outward to find traces of Heather. They can look inward to find the whole person, because that's where she'll be. And my life has been immeasurably enriched by the time I spent with Heather. I had 12 years to get to know her almost on a daily basis. I should feel incredibly lucky and grateful for that. And yet, God, what I wouldn't give to be able to steal just one more joke.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amanda, and I met Heather about 10 years ago through Jason, actually, who lived with my husband back pre-Amanda and Heather days. And we met for the first time when they were both taking us out on a double date to a Dave Matthews Band concert. And I can say I think there was probably more chemistry between Heather and I than anybody else. But hey, we both got married, and it's all good. But when I was asked to speak today, I was both honored and completely horrified at the task to stand up in a room full of people that Heather so revered and loved, and to try and encapsulate her essence in this brief moment. It's almost impossible to do. How do you describe the light from a star, or a gust of wind, or a miracle for that matter? You can see it, and you can feel it, and you can be moved by it, and you can reflect on it. But how do you capture it in words that are really adequate? In my attempt, I will say this: Heather was a force, as everybody's kind of echoed today. In her 39 years, she was accomplished so much more than most of us will accomplish in a lifetime. She was very proud to say she was senior class president, as I'm sure you've all heard. She studied abroad in London and interned at the White House, and worked at Radio City Music Hall with her New York friends, and then moved here to Los Angeles and landed this amazing job with Max and Dave, which would ultimately become her greatest career achievement. And she got to work on shows, which, I don't know, I've worked on some pretty bad shows, but she got to work on shows that she really loved with people that she really adored. And she built a strong foundation of friends who became family during her time on Will and Grace. And then she even got herself a husband from that, so that's awesome too. And then together, Jason and Heather created these two amazing little boys, Maddie and James. And if you know Heather, you know that they were her everything. Although she had built this life in Los Angeles, we all know that Heather's heart was in New York. It's where she grew up. It's where her family that she loved so much resided. Every holiday, birthday, special event, I know she ached to be on what she fondly referred to as her coast. But she stuck with us here in the West, and thank God she did. I know I can speak for most of you when I say that Heather was the type of person and friend that had the ability to make you feel special and loved instantly. She was the type of person who realized that the small gestures ultimately made the biggest impact. She was the friend that would call you and leave a 3-minute long stream of consciousness voicemail of like, these weird sing-song things. It was awesome. Or just a quick, like, I miss you during the day, or a text message. I remember the last text message she sent was right before she got on the plane to New York, and it was just an I miss you with like 30 yeses. It was great. It was handwritten cards and gifts wrapped and always tied with satin bows because she liked that. It was anything and everything monogrammed. They're a little preppy. It was long hugs and meaningful, judgeless conversations about life, love, and motherhood. She always took time to remind you that she had your back and she was there. You know that saying, it's all in the details? Well, Heather was the details. She was funny, like really, really funny. She was quick-witted, self-sacrificing. She had this laugh that when you really got her going, she would incite laughter from everyone around her. It was contagious. She was contagious. This is all very hard for me to understand, as I'm sure you can all agree. It's physically painful at times when you lose someone like Heather. There's a huge hole in my heart, and I'm not sure if that'll ever repair. But I know this for sure, that if Heather were here today, she'd have a good cry with me, because she was good for that. And then she'd grab me by my shoulders and say, all right, time to put your big girl pants on and keep going. This is life, and you only get one. So to honor her, I promise to do that, to think of her often and have a laugh. I promise to sing Broadway show tunes in my car as loud as I can. I promise to hug her baby boys as often as I can in that smothering, motherly kind of way. I promise to be there for Jason, whom she loves so much, as a friend or drinking partner, or I'll fold your laundry, whatever you need. I promise to send pictures of the boys to her family as often as I can, even though I promise you they will not have as funny of captions or like the epic hashtags that she was known for. I promise to keep in touch with her friends that she loves so much. Kim, who's not here today, Patrick, Marcy, Bada Bing, Colin, Mary, to name a few. I promise to celebrate her every day and in every moment that I would have if she were still here. To quote Les Mis, because I feel like she would appreciate this. Even the darkest night will end and the sun will rise. I love you, Heather, until we meet again.
Heather wouldn't believe this. I can't believe this. This is amazing. This room full of people. She just wouldn't believe it. This is one of those things I'm dying to tell her about. I hope she's watching. My name's Melissa Strauss. Many of you know me as the other girl that works in the office with Heather. So many people over the years would call the office and say, Heather? I'm like, no, it's Melissa. Heather and I shared many offices. We shared many offices over a span of more than 10 years at CBS Radford and here at Warner Brothers. Most of the time, we were about 5 feet from one another, so we'd hear everything the other one was doing, and every conversation, every complaint. We shared everything about our lives. And as you might expect, in a small space, we would get on each other's nerves too. She thought that I talked too loud, and I thought she played her music too loud. I mean, you try to get your work done with Adele blasting all day. It was really hard. Heather and I met in 2003. I was working at NBC in the talent relations department, and I used to get calls all the time from these Will and Grace folks with demands, and so I would have to talk to Heather all the time. And at some point, it was no longer a phone relationship, and we met at a party at Jamie French's house. We clicked, and she basically recruited me to come and work as an assistant for Max and David. So I came and worked there and started my life with Heather. One thing I learned about Heather right away was that she loved doing her work. She loved working on set and taking the lead on everything, being the face on set that everyone turned to get their answers, because everyone was too scared to ask Max. She was friends with everyone on set, and she was the last one to leave at night because she was just catching up with the crew. She was bound to meet someone with her outgoing personality and that was Jason. She met Jason on Will and Grace, and that was meant to be. Back in the office, we were a family, a dysfunctional family. David and Max were our parents, and Heather and I were the kids. And our parents would fight a lot. And Heather and I would always say, Mommy and Daddy are fighting again. Like with every family, the last couple of years have brought around some change. During this time, Max, Heather, and I would have a little extra time to kibitz. Max really liked the idea that the three of us were just tacky secretaries in the steno pool, holding on to our big gulps and gossiping. Basically, our conversations consisted of what we ate last night that upset our stomachs, what we ate that day that upset our stomachs, and what we would try not to eat that night to upset our stomachs again. And she loved singing. Everybody knows this. She was just always singing. If you walked in the office, she would make up a song that had your name in it or anything. She would make up silly songs and sing Broadway tunes. And I perform in musicals on the side. And not only was she very supportive, she would come to all of my shows, but every show before it opened, I would get a voicemail or a phone call from her, and she would sing, "Another opening, another show," in her best Ethel Merman voice. She was so nice of her. And she would sing the song Sherry Baby to Sherry, Max's business manager, every time she called, just because she knew it drove her crazy. I have an amazing voicemail of Heather singing Happy Birthday to me that I will cherish forever. I found it on my phone a couple weeks ago, and it's amazing. Whenever she would call me after hours or on the weekend regarding work, she knew it would bug me. So I would always answer the phone whenever I saw her number come up on caller ID in a very flat, monotone, hello. And she would mimic right back in that same monotone, hello, and immediately just diffuse my annoyance. It kind of became a bit that we would do no matter what. As I said before, we were more than coworkers. We were really good friends. She was one of the first people I would text if something happened to me out of work, or if I saw someone we knew, or if I had a funny story to tell. Just the other day, just a couple of days ago, I saw one of the actors from Breaking Bad at my doctor's office, and I went to text Heather to tell her. That was the type of thing that we would do. So that's going to be a hard habit to break. It was really hard to come in on Tuesday morning and not dissect the night before's episode of The Bachelor. That's what we would do. We shared so much during the week, talking about our lives, our families, relationships, our dreams, our fears. Before we left for Christmas break, Heather and I did what we always do. We chatted and sat and talked about our plans. She gave me a gift, and she joked that she thought I was going to return it. We were just texting all weekend about stupid stuff. Getting the news that we'd lost Heather over the holidays seemed unreal. Maybe it was because we weren't at the office. Somehow I expected to see her at her desk this past Monday and to find out that there had just been a big mistake. But her desk was empty all week. I miss her shining face at work, as I know so many people here do. It's so wonderful to see all of these familiar faces here as the love of Heather brought us all together. I have to say, I have been overwhelmed these last couple of weeks with people calling and emailing me, asking if they could help in any way, and it means so much. And I know that it's because we all love Heather, and it's amazing how much everybody cares. You should know that up until a couple of hours ago, we actually had 3 screening rooms booked. They were a bunch of smaller sizes, and we were just so overwhelmed with RSVPs that in a last-minute reprieve, we got this amazing theater, and I think that was Heather watching down on us and bringing it all together and bringing everybody into one big room. So anyway, we will forever have this bond because of Heather, and I thank you all so much. Thank you for your love and support. I love you, Heather.
What are we all doing here? We are not supposed to be here. This is going to be the slowest you have ever heard me talk in your lives. This is just too big. And it's so big that I haven't really even been able to figure out how I'm going to do this or what I'm even going to say. I'm struggling. I am at a loss. The person that sat 10 feet away from me for the past 13 years is suddenly gone. It's really too much. So I think the only way that I can talk about life with Heather is if I focus on little things. And maybe when I'm done, we can string together a handful of these little things and the little moments that I shared with Heather. And that way I can give you some idea of the essence of the woman and how much she meant to me. And how very much I'm going to miss having her in my life. Heather and I were fixed up by David Geffen's office, Natch. It was an arranged marriage. That's the way we used to do it down in the gay shtetl in the day. We met on the Radford lot. I was working on the crown jewel of my writing career, Good Morning Miami. A show that included a nun that did the weather. Heather and I were into each other from the moment we laid eyes on one another, which is hard to believe because the first time I met her, she was wearing a wrinkled red Talbot suit. And size 15 slingback pumps that were so chewed up, they looked like she had just hitchhiked across the country in them. Years later, she would admit to me that she had dressed herself in her car for the interview and was mostly worried about sweating through her smart blazer. I don't really remember what she told me about herself that afternoon, but clearly I was impressed. I do remember the only question I asked her at the interview because I knew it would tell me everything I wanted to know. I asked her, "Do you love your mother?" And she said that indeed she did. And you know that, Nancy. I hired her on the spot, and I told her the place was hers to run. I only had one rule: don't fuck Dave Cohan. She found sticking to that rule a lot easier than Dave would care to admit. And for the record, she was hired to work for me and Cohan. On paper, we shared her. And clearly, they had a special bond. He was her boss for many years, but to me, Heather was all mine. The first project I gave Heather was to organize a fundraiser at my house for Bill Clinton. She took on the assignment with a surprising confidence, and the event turned out amazing. She did it like an old pro. She sat Carrie Lizer next to Bill Clinton. She knew what she was doing. She sat Kevin Spacey next to a cute cater waiter. I'll admit it if he won't. She got how to do things. She even got Peter Roth to come to the event. And I think I was more nervous about Peter and Andrea Roth being at my house that night than I was about Bubba being there. The next day, I told her that she had done such an incredible job that I wanted to buy furniture for her for the new apartment that she had just gotten. She was very uncomfortable with the idea, but ultimately she gave in as a result of my relentless, guilt-driven, inappropriate Jewish, here, take this because I'm going to be a nightmare to work with, giving thing. I said, pick out whatever you want and I'll call the store with my credit card and pay for whatever you choose. I told her to get stuff for her entire flat. After she picked the stuff out, she came to work and she said she thought that it was a bad idea and that if I wanted to, I could back out of it. When I called the store, frankly, I was shocked. I think I furnished the dump for $600. See, I thought I was going to. We were both happy. But what's important to note from this first little story about Heather and me is the fact that a precedent was now set. A precedent that would last. A precedent that would last our entire relationship. We took care of one another. And by we, of course, I mean Heather took care of me. I wish everyone in this room that I love, and that's almost all of you, I wish in your lifetime you could be blessed with the gatekeeper, the confidant, the drug mule. What does it matter? What is HR going to do now? She picked up my Ativan and some Vicodin. And once she got me OxyContin for the Golden Globes. You sit next to Deborah Messing for 8 years in a row. Not a single Globe. We never won an award. To her core, Heather was a full-time, fully committed support system. This brings me to the essential truth of my relationship with her. With Heather in my life, I knew I was always going to be safe. Somehow, this young woman from Clifton Park, New York, showed up at my office 13 years ago and gave me something that no shrink or silly boyfriend or fancy showbiz friend could do for me. She taught me how to trust, absolutely and unequivocally. And she never violated that trust. When Heather was in the room with me, I was at peace, even when I wasn't feeling peaceful, and that was a lot. I knew Heather was going to be on the other side of a bad phone call or a tough day of writing, and my connection to her would soothe me. Besides my husband, she is literally the only person in the world that I can fall asleep in front of. It's a tender notion, but it goes in only one direction. I had my rule, and Heather had hers. She would not touch me when I was asleep. I grossed her out. Maybe it was my mouth breathing or my nap terrors where I would wake up in my chair at work because I thought I was being choked to death by Chuck Lorre. As the years passed, we became closer and closer. We were able to say more with less words. In fact, our relationship was so solid, so in sync, so contained, that it took us a little while to realize that we were both lacking the same thing, husbands. That's when she fell in love with the amazing Jason Irvin, and that's when I found Eric. But Heather and I were still going to take care of one another. I insisted that she and Jason get married in the backyard of my humble Beverly Hills estate. For the record, she offered in return to allow Eric and I to legally wed in her Toluca Lake 2-bedroom, 2-bath. In the end, we took a pass on that offer, basically because I felt the same way about getting married in her apartment as she felt about waking me up. I never will forget seeing Heather walk down the stairs in our house on the day of her wedding. She had never looked so beautiful to me, and because of what our relationship had become, we just stared at each other. We said nothing. Finally, she said, "What do you think?" I put my arms around her because I loved her so much, and I whispered into her ear, "The tailor has totally fucked up your dress." You look like the three-titted freak from Total Recall. But I'm sure I'm the only one who will notice. And because Heather loved me as much as I loved her, she would later tell me that I ruined her wedding because I insisted that they turn off the music too early. I wanted to go to bed. I don't love the fact that she thinks I ruined her wedding, but I do love that she was honest enough and felt close enough to me to tell me that I did. I don't love that I bought her a BMW as a way of atoning for ruining her wedding. But I do love the fact that she accepted it. There is no sense of what happened on December 22nd. And there are no lessons in it. There are just feelings of sadness and of loss. And if there is any spin that I can put on it, it's this. I have these feelings because I loved her so much. We all did. We loved someone deeply because we allowed ourselves to have open hearts. Everyone in this room is hopefully feeling something because they are in touch with the only thing that will matter in our lifetime. It's who and how much we love. If Heather's death has given me anything, it has put me in touch with my capacity to love. He's also done a good job with that, too. I'm talking about Eric, not Dave. Dave's done good, too. And I hope that's done that for all of us. And for me, that's enough. I'll search no further because as horrible and difficult and unimaginable as all of this is, I'm going to try very hard to keep the love that Heather created in me alive and to allow it and to allow that love to see me through the next days and weeks that lay ahead. Heather Hicks made me a better man while she was alive. And somehow, she has figured out a way to do it after she's gone. Thank you, Heather. I love you.
Oh, here we go. Me. Happy birthday to you. Cha cha cha. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Misty. Cha cha cha. Happy birthday. We can't do it. Can't do it. Now warm it up, my favorite drink, rich cold water, so the vocal cords are tight.
Once there was a way to get back homeward. Once there was a way to get back home. Sleep, pretty darling, do not cry, and I will sing a lullaby. Golden slumbers fill your eyes, smiles await you when you rise. Sleep, pretty darling, do not cry, and I will sing a lullaby. Once there was a way to get back homeward. Once there was a way to get back home. Sleep, pretty darling, don't you cry. I'll sing a lullaby. And in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make.
Well, this is just an incredible congregation, you guys. This is a tribute to her. And thank you on behalf of her family, on behalf of Jason. Thank you for coming tonight. There's going to be a reception out in the lobby. So, as Heather might say, let's go have a drink. Good night.